technically, I don't know who I'm waiting for. One, two. Limai is no longer on with us.
He's no longer here?
Limai, right? She's not up here on the stage with us. Have everyone represented here with our banners and representation. Fasin, Benishi A, ZTE, Ujiha, Anishinaabe Keda, Oklahoma A, Dochene. My name is Benishi Albert, and I'm Yuchi and Anishinaabe, and I am from Oklahoma in the so-called United States, and I'm one of the co-directors for the Climate Justice Alliance. I thank you all for being here today as we're going to be talking about frontline solutions to the climate crisis. And I'm very excited to be here with this panel of experts and a panel of those who are pushing some important work in their communities that will benefit us all worldwide. And so just before we get started, I wanted to offer a moment. I know we have some people who are going to continue to trickle in, but this has been a hard week for many folks, both here and abroad. We have lost some important leaders. There's been violence and harm in some communities, and some folks who are also suffering from disasters and other harms, right? So I would like to just offer a moment of silence for us before we get started. And please pray or whatever it makes sense to you for yourself. Just want to thank you for indulging that for a minute. Just important for us to remember those who are hurting both here and at home, and to just send out strength to everyone. So today's panel is Frontline Solutions to the Climate Crisis and How Communities Adapt, Respond, and Fight Climate Change. And the folks that we have here come from a number of communities who are not only taking on climate change, but are actually addressing the harms that they're experiencing in their community as directly as they know how to do. And sometimes that is in despite of support from any government or philanthropy sources. People are just doing what needs to be done in their communities. And so I'm very excited to be here to help moderate this panel. And so to begin, I just want to go through and have each panelist introduce themselves, your name, your organization, and where you're coming from. We will get into the questions of the work and the issues. So for now, we're just going to go through, and I'm going to start at this end, invite Chengeto, and we'll come down, and everyone can introduce themselves.
Okay, thank you. My name is Chengeto Sandra Muzira. I'm a member of La Via Campesina, and I'm in the International Coordinating Committee representing the youth in Africa region. I'm also a member of the Zimbabwe Smallholder Organic Farmers Forum, where we are building on a holistic approach way of life that creates a balance between nature, that creates relationships and respect between nature and us people. And we are doing this through Peasant Agroecology. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Javier Andrades Nazario. I come from Boriquén, or how the colonial settlers called it, Puerto Rico. That means rich port. I can imagine you guys know what that means. I come representing Organización Boricua de Agricultura Ecológica. That's the organization that accompanies agroecology in Puerto Rico and our islands. I come also representing more than 200 million farmers, rural communities, peasants, and food sovereignty activists around the world. And also we're here with our allies, Climate Justice Alliance and Grassroots Global Justice Alliance. Just so you know, we're not alone. We work with agroecology. That's not my daytime work, that's my lifestyle. Everything that we do revolves around that. And I'm very grateful to be with you guys here today. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Valencia Gunder. Most folks just call me V, feel free to call me that. I am coming to you all the way from Miami, Florida in the United States. I'm the co-founder and co-director of the Smile Trust in the United States, and I'm also a proud member of the Climate Justice Alliance, and I also serve as the co-lead of the Black Hive at the Movement for Black Lives. Super happy to be here. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Nadia. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I am the co-founder of a climate justice and feminist group called Klima Action Malaysia. It's youth-led. It's being led by young people. It's for the declaration of climate emergency in Malaysia. Today, I'm also representing the Climate Emergency Coalition of Malaysia. Thank you.
Hafide Tiro, Guahusi Mina Flores Cantrell. My name is Mina Flores Cantrell. I'm an Indigenous daughter of both Chamorro and Okinawan descent. I was born and raised and am currently based out of right now, Guahan, which is otherwise known as the island of Guam. It's an unincorporated U.S. territory, which is a part of an archipelago comprising of 15 islands called the Mariana Islands, and we are based out of Micronesia, Pacifica. I work with Micronesia Climate Change Alliance, which is a grassroots nonprofit organization, also a member organization of CJA and GGJ, and we help to cultivate and create community-centered solutions to mitigate the climate crisis that our people are facing. I also have a small eco-friendly business called Numatlu Refillery to help our community members reduce its single-use plastic waste because we have a huge, massive, colossal waste issue on our islands. And I flew 33 hours to be here, 4 flights, fought food poisoning on one, and I am very glad to be here, and I have a lot of people and behind me and stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, so thank you for listening to me today.
Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Leah Mai Torres from the Center for Environmental Concerns Philippines. It's a nonprofit, non-government organization focusing on environmental research, education, and advocacy, working closely with local communities around the Philippines. I'm also part of the Secretariat of the Asia Pacific Network of Environment Defenders. It is a solidarity campaign network of organizations working for environmental rights and the defense of environmental defenders. Thank you.
So again, just a reminder, so this panel is the frontline solutions to the climate crisis and how communities adapt, respond, and fight climate change. This panel is co-sponsored by Climate Justice Alliance, La Via Campesina, and the Center for Environmental Concerns of the Philippines. And it's important, this discussion and this panel is important today because we know that there is lots of things happening because of climate change, extreme weather, drought, and the impacts that has onto food and local economies, and also the sort of economic struggles that communities are dealing with because of climate change. And so the panelists here are representing peasants, farm workers, fisher people, indigenous people, Black young people, in all of the ways that we show up into this work and represent for our communities, and wanting to share both in this space of the COP to the UN, but also to those in our communities about what's happening to us individually in our communities and how is that connected to others. And others worldwide, other communities that we're both able to engage with here at COP, but also building relationship between the organizations that are here. And this is important because the frontline voices are the one, and I say frontline being those who are experiencing the harm from the climate crisis today, right? Not in the future, but today. They're also frontline because many of these communities live along the fence line of polluting industries who are also the main contributors to the climate crisis that we're in. That's what we mean by frontline communities. And these are communities who have been dealing with the harms, not right now today, but some for decades and some for a long, long time, and are here to share, one, the urgency of being able to move on the crisis and urge those who are in the negotiating spaces to move with the urgency of ending the harm that communities are experiencing. And because we can't wait for that to happen from the world governments, these communities are saying, here's what we're doing right now to work on climate change and what it means and the harms that we're experiencing in our communities, and share both the priorities that need to be shared here in this space, but also the opportunity for the solutions that are working and are working for our communities. And so the goals today is to sort of uplift those solutions of the communities, but also be able to cultivate a deeper understanding of the solutions that we want to see happen coming and originating from community perspective, right? There's a lot that is happening here that tends to look at the sort of large corporate perspective, and we're saying that's not those who had contributed to this problem are not the ones that we should be relying on to fix this problem. And those who are actually dealing with the harms most directly should be the main and primary voices to be heard around what are the solutions they want to see happen. So I'm going to come and have each of you just share a little bit more about your organization. We'll give a few minutes to do that. You just talked a little bit just about your introduction, but to share a little bit about the work that you're going to be doing. So maybe 3-4 minutes. I will try to give you a high sign. I'm not going to be rude or anything about that, but just share a little bit about your, what are you building in your community and what do you want to see happen and the challenges that you're facing. So we'll start down at this end.
Okay. So for us in the Philippines, it is actually the local communities that hold the solution when it comes to climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. And what we would like to expose now is the false solutions that are being brandished by our government. We are actually a signatory of the Paris Agreement, and our president, who was newly elected, has actually made bold pronouncements on climate change action. He is the son of the late dictator Marcos and trying to push forward policies and projects that was done by his father. But now we think that the targets of the government to achieve renewable energy and decline carbon emissions or other greenhouse gas emissions cannot be achieved with the pace that is happening now. We already have a Renewable Energy Act, but it has a very limited definition and does not include human rights in the process of transitioning to renewable energy, and does not really take away the dependence on coal-fired power plants. So we have seen in many communities exposing these false climate solutions, such as mega dams, that are being harassed and attacked because of their work. So an example is Kaliwa Dam. It is a dam funded by the Chinese government. It is seen to have grave impacts on the environment, causing local extinction of aquatic species and also causing displacement of Dumagat Remontado indigenous people. But then again, it is still being pushed because of the loans. They say that it will bring about money, but then again, we believe that that is not the case. And many indigenous people have already been killed in the past decades because of their opposition to the dam. And there's also a practice of the government called red tagging, where they call indigenous people and other environmental advocates as terrorists and communists. And they use it as a justification for further attacks, criminalization, arrests, harassment, and intimidation. And it doesn't happen only in that site. Just recently, in another province in Laguna, in the project called Ahonan Pumped Hydropower Plant, a 69-year-old woman who was a leader in the community was actually literally dragged from her home to be arrested. They're saying that she is a terrorist, a communist, and she was charged with rebellion. But she's actually known to be the leader of the opposition of the large dam. So we think that one of the gravest threats now is the attacks on environmental defenders, even though they are presenting viable solutions like micro hydro and not really these mega dams that the government would want. So we have continuously talked to them to develop what their definition is for what kind of energy sector they would like. And they said that renewable energy is not enough. We have to have just and sustainable energy. And this means that developing renewable energy, but ensuring that human rights are upheld, there is no development aggression, nobody gets killed in the process, and indigenous people and other residents of local communities are not displaced by these renewable energy projects. And we believe that for this to continue, it should be supported by the government, and not only for profit, but for actual benefit of the local communities, including giving them jobs and actually energy that they benefit from and does not only go to the capital. So that's for a case in the Philippines. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to have a lot more questions coming through, and also questions from the audience at another point. So I'm going to pass to Mina.
So at my org, we build solutions with our community at the center of the design process, because it is our community who is surviving through and bearing the front load of climate change. So we work with a sundry of people, including other existing on-the-ground organizers that focus on very specific climate catastrophe, like the contamination of our waters, the unconsented seizure of our lands, the lack of security for our food systems, just to name a few. We work with other environmentally centered organizations and businesses, sustainably minded political leaders, teachers, students, youth, artists, activists, cultural practitioners, and the most important to us is our Manamku, which is our elder Chamorro community, because we do believe that they are the holders of our indigenous knowledge and wisdom, and they have the lived experience of living and surviving through colonization for generations. The most harmful thing that we persist through, because of our political status as a territory with no legal rights to vote for our president, no federal representation at our level, our intrinsic rights to perpetuate our indigenous lifeways and just merely thrive as human beings has always been put on the back burner. So we persist through this harm all the time, and we have a lot of trauma and environmental destruction, and this is particularly due to the heavy militarization on our islands. We're very close to China, Japan, other countries, and so our lands and our waters are used as very strategic ploys by world militaries. There are currently 2 military bases on Guahan. One occupies 1/3 of our lands, and right now, as I speak, a third is being built. And it's being built because they're relocating 5,000 Marines from Okinawa to our lands, and these Marines are being moved because of the pattern of sexual assault committed against Okinawa women and also environmental harms to their lands. So the military has also cleared 5,000 acres of pristine limestone forest to build a firing range complex in one of our most ancient and sacred villages known as Liktexan. And it's right next to a wildlife refuge that protects many of our last standing native species of trees and animals. In this process, the military has dug up the remains of many of our buried ancestors. I'm going to say that again. My ancestors are being dug up by the military, and they're being stored in a storage facility right now. So the fight against this buildup, I just want to acknowledge, has been spearheaded by our friends at Putehi, Liktexan, Save Retidian, and they have fought this battle, this uphill battle for years to educate the community about what's going on, and they have taken plenty of legal action against the military, and we have not fought so far in our we have not won so far in our battles, but we are persisting through. At the same time as this firing range is being built, it's being strategically placed over our largest and only aquifer on our island, which provides 85% of our drinking water. 6.7 million lead bullets will be fired over this aquifer every single year, posing a threat to our soils, our underground water supplies, and our health and our respiratory systems. A youth-led organization called Protect Guam Water is currently leading the advocacy in the fight against this as well. Lastly, the Air Force has also begun to conduct open burning and open detonations at one of our northern beaches on island, a beach that personally my family and I have camped on every single summer since I was little, a beach that my grandfather has fished at, and plenty of our fish species live in, and will be subject to harm as well. And so the military has just caused so much harm to us, and we have taken plenty of legal action. And I hope you're here listening to me as I'm speaking, because this military is supposed to defend our lands, and it's causing harm to my community. So I'll speak up on just that.
Thank you, Mina. So I'm passing on next to, yes, Nadia.
Okay. I just want to say that this past few days has been truly emotional. My country right now is underwater, 5,000 flood victims and communities being displaced. And I do not think that I want to actually explain what kind of issues that we are seeing in Malaysia at the moment, because Leah actually shared the most key things. We actually shared the same Southeast Asia tragedy where renewable energy but not responsible energies like mega dams are being considered as the energy of the future, where carbon offset deals are being set in on the lands of communities where communities are not being consulted. Maybe I can just start a little bit about my organization. We were practically born on the streets in Malaysia, where we organized some of the first climate protests in Malaysia back in 2019. In Malaysia, women make up less than 30% of the political participation, yet we make up 50% of our population. That's 30% of political participation in our democracy. So that is around 15 million of women's needs being put in the back seat while all men continue to make choices on our bodies, on our health, on our education, on our future. Our ovaries are not ours. So our civic spaces are shrinking. As climate impacts intensifies, we see COVID-19 exacerbate inequalities. And business, state, and community conflict and violence continue on the rise. But then, our National Human Rights Commission in Malaysia are not allowed to present their annual human rights report in the last 3 years at the Malaysian Parliament, but yet Malaysia presents itself as a leader at the United Nations Human Rights Council. So the government has forsaken us, but yet we are not alone. We have a saying in Malaysia, kita jaga kita, rakyat jaga rakyat, which means the people take care of each other. So in creating solidarity, we invest a lot in creating knowledge to build power and solidify people's power upon the ground. So how do we safeguard our resilience? It starts by building connections and bridges, and it's the most demanding work ever. In Malaysia, the civil societies of various social movements began to co-build coalitions and co-create safe spaces, enabling young women from marginalized communities to lead and thrive. Today, I'm joined by two Indigenous people from Peninsular Malaysia. That's the first participation in the 20 years of COP. So thank you very much for coming and attending and sharing your stories, your truth to everyone. So our coalition currently of around 20 to 30 civil societies in Malaysia of indigenous communities, fisher folks and farmers, we have written a love letter to our Malaysian government. In this love letter, we declared our love to the Mother Earth, and we recognize that we are in an emergency and existential crisis. We are nature fighting against ourselves. So we gave 12 recommendations of areas of actions once a climate emergency is being declared. And these key actions are all rooted in human rights and rights-based approach and science. And we will continue to resist and spread our seeds of love and peace. So we are told by old men in positions of power that protests are not in our bloods. It is not part of our culture. How the old forget. In my affirmation today, in the final days of COP, I call for all young people to continue the tradition of building power to disrupt once again. There is nowhere better to disrupt the structures of power than in COP. Power, power, power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that passionate sharing and of, the specific recommendations that you're giving. So much appreciation for that. Passing on to V.
So, when it comes to the work, I have a few sayings. One, I believe that we should always be contesting power from the state and practices models of self-determination. And I also have a strong belief that every organizer should be a first responder. They're not coming, y'all. Your government is not going to come. The Red Cross damn for sure not going to come. And we got to stop waiting, right? Self-determination. What do we have for ourselves when nobody want to give us shit? That's what we practice at the Smile Trust. We show up for our communities after every disaster, man-made and natural, right? And we know that grassroots networks, grassroots response, and grassroots solutions work. And they work across language, they work across borders, they work across communities, and they work across religions. And I have many examples to share with you here today. Since I started the Smile Trust in 2015, I've had the pleasure to work with many communities across the state of Florida, which where I live, in Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Louisiana, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Haiti, St. Kitts, Jamaica, Bahamas, all doing the same type of work. Organizers on the front line after disasters, responding to their own communities, hitting more numbers, getting more supplies, more food, more solutions to our people than any government can ever see. Just 2 weeks ago, exhausted after the hurricane in Florida, working with 63 organizations across 8 counties, we were able to serve 187,000 households within 7 days. That's what organizers do. That's what community organizations do. Hearing from undocumented farm workers in Florida say this is the first time supplies ever made it to them. Organizers did that. Just last year after the earthquake in Haiti, we sent 300 tons of supplies, set up 15 triage centers to make sure our folks had medical help, sent nurses into the country of Haiti, moving faster than any other institution. I didn't show up there. I'm nobody's savior. Guess who showed up for Haiti? Haiti showed up for Haiti every single time, right? We see it happening too often where our communities don't have fresh water, where our communities are being flooded, where hurricanes and tornadoes and fires are taking over our communities, and the government leaves us there every single time, y'all. Every single time. So yes, we should contest power from the state because they owe us reparations, absolutely, right? We deserve everything that we're asking for, but when they don't give it to us, we should never wait. We should never wait. It's so many examples that just when we show up as grassroots leaders, how we can help one another. Just last month, when Jackson, Mississippi was determined they would not have clean water indefinitely, it was grassroots who showed up to make sure the people of Jackson, Mississippi had water, water filtration systems, and testing kits to make sure that our folks had what they needed in the time of any type of disaster. We know in the west of the United States, when the forest fires hits, who shows up for those when the tornadoes slash through our communities? It is us who shows up. Every organizer deserves to know how to respond to their communities. We know our communities better than anybody, y'all. And I'm going to close with saying this. They're never going to show up. They will leave us to die. They don't care that we don't have food, water, and housing, but we care. We're going to show up every single time. If that's at the Capitol steps or on the corner with a barbecue grill, we will make sure our people have what they need, and we're not waiting around for nobody to save us. Thank you.
Again, powerful solutions led by community. So I'm coming down to my colleague here, Javier.
Again, we from La Via Campesina are representing millions of rural communities around the world. And the forefront for these people, for our people, is real, and we feel it every day. Us from the Caribbean, being from a colonial territory, in the middle of the hurricane path that each year we have to deal with, in the middle of a group of islands that is totally divided. We don't have a relationship. We have different languages. It's crazy and hectic. And we've been divided from the beginning. Our struggle is real. We feel the front line for us farmers is in the land. We're bringing back that relationship for growing food that they're trying to take out. If you're listening to the solutions here, they're not real. I feel them every day. We feel them in the ground with sweat, with blood. It's real. We feel them. The front line means that we're there every day, and food is what we need to feed our planet. We, as La Via Campesina, know that most of the food that's grown on this planet is grown by small farmers around the world. They don't want you to know that. They don't want you to know that. All they show is technology. All they show is big farms in the United States and the imperialist countries that have dominated us for thousands of years. And what we're bringing is ancestral knowledge, ancestral technologies, bringing that to our young generation, educating the people that are coming through so they understand that we have powerful things that we can really use. It's not theory, it's not a speech. Also, it's not a silver bullet. Also, it's not a generic solution that you can just shove to everybody. We have to be in those communities to really understand what we need. And day to day, we're really living it. Again, the forefront, that's the forefront. That's what we see from all the people in this panel. And it's incredible to be in an international movement that recognizes that and empowers people to work towards that. In agroecology, we want to phase out conventional agriculture that's polluting this world. We want to empower our people and the young generation. I come from the city. In Puerto Rico, the islands where we come from, being a farmer is being uncivilized. That's the past. That's bad. That's what I was told my whole life. Being from a country that's rural, that's agrarian, that's what we know. That's in our blood, and they want to take that out. So we're working hard, because it's hard. Believe me, it's hard every day. Everybody wants to work around farming. They want to talk about that. We're doing it every day. Again, lifestyle. That's the only thing that we can think and understand, and we want to educate everybody so that they know that there are other options, and we do not have to believe in everything that's being told here. If we're here, we know the cold environment, white, clean solutions, it's not real. It's not real. So again, we're promoting these messages, but they have to be related to every context and every reality, and we have to understand that because we're in the ground. We're in the ground with those solutions. Thank you, and we hope to keep on with that.
Go ahead, Chinga.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the struggle is real. And we are also saying as an organization, as La Via Campesina, as the Zimbabwe Small Organic Farmers Forum, that we are saying no to these false solutions that they are imposing on us. We've seen that they are the ones who've created the solution, the problems, and they are the ones also who are coming with the solutions which do not work for us. We advocate for a bottom-up approach. We advocate for the voices of the peasants. We advocate for the voices of the farmers, of the pastoralists, the fisher folks that are on the earth. We believe in the community-based solutions. We believe that we can find our own solution without anyone coming to dictate to us or tell us what to eat, tell us what to do. We are building communities that have resilience, because we've seen that these big corporates are coming into our countries, they are grabbing our lands, they are taking our territories, they are wiping away our indigenous norms, they are wiping away our indigenous seeds, but we are totally saying no to that. And as an organization, we believe in the indigenous knowledge systems. We believe that long ago there was a balance between nature and people. That is what we are trying to fight back for. With the use of indigenous seeds, whereby we are encouraging at every household to at least have a household seed banks, whereby we conserve our indigenous seed, whereby we break the dependency on these chemicals, the dependency on the pesticides, the dependency on the seeds that are hybrid, that are not working. They have been saying that the GMOs work, but it's been years now, and hunger is continuing to accelerate in Africa. So this doesn't work. We say that indigenous knowledge system, peasant agroecology works to achieve climate justice as well as food sovereignty in our communities.
Wow. So you all have just heard from experts, right, of the climate crisis and what they're doing and having impact in the community, their own communities, and having impact on the harms that they're experiencing. How can you create a policy to end hunger if you've never been hungry, right? How can you end the hurt if you have never been hurt by the climate change, right? So these are the experts that we want to have leadership in these negotiations and in these discussions, the folks who have the expertise and the experience, the lived experience of what it is like to live within the climate crisis and the hurt and pain from the climate crisis, right? We don't need more techno fixes. We need solutions that come from communities. And so we've heard a lot of these community solutions, and I'm gonna bounce a few questions around to a few folks, and we're gonna engage in some more sharing. And so right now I wanna offer this question to both Limai and Mina, whichever one or both. Just a minute or so. You know, we've heard a lot about the community-based solutions everyone has shared here. For your community, how do those solutions that you're wanting to promote, how are they different than what is being proposed both here and in your state or region, that is different than what you feel like is needed? So for example, if you're a farmer, what's being proposed that is different than what you all are trying to do?
Sure. I'm going to speak specifically about energy democracy on Guahan and how that looks for us. So one of our strategic goals at Micronesia Climate Change Alliance is to educate our community about the right to clean air through community-led cooperative solar farms. And what is contrasting that solution that we're trying to foster is that we have one sole power company on our island, Guam Power Authority, GPA, which has been proposing false solutions to the energy crisis happening on our island for years now. They've promised our community that 55% of our island will be powered by two projects. One, a $600 million solar farm, and two, a liquefied natural gas power plant. The solar farm was just built last year, and it was built in partnership with KEPCO, the Korean electric power company. Not only does KEPCO have a long history of corruption and scandal, ranging from taking fake bribes to faking false security certificates, but in 2015, GPA worked with KEPCO, a subsidiary of KEPCO, and built a power plant that exploded on our island. So what did GPA do? Well, they were granted $125 million in damages. They turned around and hired KEPCO again to create this 60 megawatt solar farm. KEPCO, with this solar farm, did not follow the construction plans that were reviewed both by the local and US EPA, and did not have efficient erosion measures on site. So what happened is the waste runoff scrolled through Chamorro lands, family lands, and also contaminated a local and ancient water cave that provided Chamorros in the past fresh water. This just happened last year, Marble Caves. This is a cave that my family for generations have went to bathe. It's a sacred site and it's contaminated because of this power plant. That's one example. The second project, in concerns to the liquefied natural gas power plant, they are currently, as I speak, attempting to build this power plant right next to a middle school, Jose Rios Middle School. There is an existing 1993 law that prohibits fossil fuel plants to be built within 1,500 feet of a school because of the hazardous air pollutants, But of course, GPA is trying to waive this law and continue construction of the power plant to our youth, contaminating the lungs of our youth. While all this is happening, our community is being falsely led to believe that these projects will help lift the burden of expensive power rates. But the price of electricity has raised two times since I've been home, and I just moved home last year. They're the highest rates that they've ever been, and they're projected to go up 40% in the next year as well. These are false solutions that are being proposed by the one power plant on our island. Our community doesn't know any better if they only have one source of power plant, right? That's where we're coming in. We're trying to educate people that this isn't the only option. There's a lot of community options that can be built on the ground that can foster a great regenerative economy and help people get jobs. So we're continuing this fight. That's one.
Thank you. Thank you. Limay?
Hello, thank you. So, for us, regarding energy, we would like to forward a change in the framework of the energy system in the Philippines, which is not really to provide service, but mostly to provide profit to private energy companies. So, since it is deregulated by the government, it is usually the private corporations that have monopoly over electricity, not what we think should happen, which is like having community-based energy generation, like what I mentioned, micro hydropower, and also solar power that would generate electricity for the benefit of the local community and not damage local communities for the sake of only a few corporations. So when it comes to agriculture, it's good that agroecology was mentioned because we also have been forwarding the solution in the Philippines since, like what was mentioned, the older generations already have sustainable practices of agriculture, but these have been erased by the so-called Green Revolution that was forwarded by the dictator in our country during the Marcos period in the 1970s and the 1980s that killed the local seed varieties in the country. And now, even if the farmers would like to go back to sustainable agriculture through agroecology, they don't have those seeds anymore. So that's what we are trying to do, is to develop agroecology again in the country. And we have an example in one province when they had land occupation because some part of the land was being taken from them, and they had a land occupation as an assertion of their right to land but also as an assertion to change the agricultural system to agroecology. So agroecology is not really just a way or a technology, but also as a movement to claim the rights of the farmers and to ensure food security for the country. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you know, we're starting to get into more details about what is happening in communities. And, you know, some of this is really created around what is it that we need? What does our society need to do? What is the shift that we need to make happen? And, you know, we say this with the Climate Justice Alliance is that transition is inevitable, for sure, but justice is not, right? And so we're trying to change that thinking of like, we can't just think about like the systems that need to change, but the systems that are also causing harm, to make sure that those who are experiencing the most harm also have the justice and the communities that we need, right? We have plenty of communities who and people in our own families. I have family members who have to work in the oil fields because that's what's economically available to them, right? And so what are the opportunities that we need to also be thinking about shifting our economy and what it's focusing on, and how do we like make sure that people can also live, you know, in both health and wellness, but have economic means to take care of their families and communities. And so, you know, we're starting to hear some of these things that are happening in communities around energy and energy production. You know, one of the things that, you know, I have been excited to hear about both here and with Frontline communities is people are starting to talk about a lot more about community-controlled energy, right? What does it mean for us to have control and say over how our power is produced and where it goes to, and, you know, where does that revenue get shared to, and how does that happen? And having that as a system as opposed to large mega corporations who are holding, you know, energy and sucking energy from all of our communities and extracting. And so one of the other pieces with that sort of transition and thinking, and we started to hear, and I'm going to offer this to both to V and Javier because you all shared a little bit of this, is like, what does it mean to like take care of community, and what does that transition look like? What does transition look like in terms of disaster recovery, and, you know, wanting to share how does mutual aid sort of start shifting what we need to be thinking about in terms of community, local community economy?
While I'm here speaking, a comrade of mine told me that there's a couple of storms coming our way. When we left Puerto Rico, it didn't stop raining. As a farmer, again, in the forefront, we feel that climate catastrophe every day. I'm not accustomed to be talking to people here. We're accustomed to be working in the forefront, in the land. And we really need to reconnect with the ecology. We can't have agriculture separated from nature. We can't have that distance, that dichotomy that says that the consumption of the world can change. We need to reduce that consumption and to really revolutionize the way that we produce food in our world. So we as agroecologists understand that relationship. We live with the land. Every year from July to November is hurricane season for us. We know it's coming. We know it. Every year is coming, and every year it gets more intense. It gets longer, so suddenly it's gonna be half of our year, and that's crazy. As she said, these traditions have been here for millennia, but they took it from us. And now we have to start from scratch. Each time something like this happens, we have to get those seeds, we have to empower our people, and we have to communicate with our communities to really take action and understand options that are sustainable to us. I can talk to you about Puerto Rico. I cannot talk to you about other islands, other countries, other continents around the world. But in Puerto Rico, for example, in 2017, we had Hurricane Maria, a Category 5 hurricane, one of the worst hurricanes in the history of our island, and we were without power for months. A lot of people, almost for a year. Some people never got connected to the grid again. What are we gonna do? We're a colonial territory without decisions. We have a board of supervision that makes decisions for our government. What are we gonna do? We have to work in that forefront to create solidarity, to create sustainability from the ground. And it has to be related to the context of each community on that ground. Again, no silver bullets, no nuclear energy, that's the future for the world. But at the same time, I'm farming. I don't understand all the solutions. What we want to bring is that culture of humble people working together and knowing that our actions impact others. If we are living in overabundance in this excessively joyful life, we know that others are not. And that rural community, those millions of people around the world can just turn on and turn off the light and go to sleep joyful and happy. And suddenly, that consumption, that crazy consumption of the imperialist and global north has to be reduced and has to be shared, because other countries want to have energy, want to evolve and progress, but it can't be in the same way that these imperialist countries have. So we have to rethink. It has to be a paradigm shift so we really understand the problems from the root. And that has to be case to case. People don't like that. People don't like complex solutions. They want simplistic solutions. So I can't tell you here what's the solution to your problems. You have to go to your communities. You have to be there. You have to feel that to understand what we have to do. And that's the reality of it. So here in COP, that's one thing that we're seeing. A bunch of solutions that are not grounded in reality. And that is not what we are going to take to our nations when we come back.
Thank you, Javier.
So I think about a few things. One, mutual aid. So, you know, after disaster, don't be mutual, y'all. Our people just need to give. And that's why I use the term relief when it's right after disaster to get us back to mutual aid. And it's oftentimes, I think about how our communities have functioned way before all these institutions were built. Before the UN was built, before it was anything like a Red Cross or whatnot, our communities been getting hurricanes, been getting storms, and they always figured out ways to respond to one another. And I just always feel like if we get back to that point, right, and we start growing the food, start stockpiling supplies, and start shaking down a lot of this waste that these huge institutions continue to pour into our communities, we will be able to become resilient. I think about just a story real quick about when we were responding to Haiti. In the hospitals, it was 2 hospitals on the southern point of Haiti. That's where the earthquake was most impacted. And I was talking to the heads of the hospital, and they were like, we ran out of supplies 6 days ago. Before the earthquake, they didn't even have oxygen in the hospitals. And here I am, we're collecting supplies, and a small hospital in Miami reached out, and they were like, well, what can we help you with? And I said, what y'all got? He was like, we have a warehouse with supplies. I said, I want it all. He was like, what? I said, I want everything in the warehouse. So he was like, well, I can't give it to you all. I said, well, don't ask me what I need then, you know? So he did send a lot of stuff. He sent about like 25 truckloads of extra supplies the hospital had. Not what the hospital needed, extra supplies. And it was able to refill these 2 hospitals 5 times to set up all of those triage centers. So I wanted to give that example of how America consumes and hoards resources to stop other nations from having what it is that they need. And it is my pleasure to shake their ass down every single time. Every single time. Our people need those things. Right during that time, Dominica is a small island in the Caribbean. They called and they said they didn't have oxygen for the hospitals. They didn't have casting materials. I was able to hit that same hospital and get them a truckload, a whole 50-foot container full of oxygen. And this was extra, America. America, why are we sitting on so much resources and starving other countries from having what it is that they need, right? Why are we using so much energy? One American uses as much energy as 370 Ethiopians. Why is that, America? It's time for us to make that shift, and it's my pleasure, y'all. Until they take my voice away, until I leave this earth, I'm going to keep shaking, and I'm going to keep shaking to make sure all of y'all communities in mind get everything we need all the time to be okay.
Let's be absolutely clear that these communities, our communities, are very clear where the economic foundation comes from our countries, right? We're very clear where that economic prosperity gets sourced from, both from the labor and from the land and the resources of our communities. So, yes, shakedown is appropriate, but it's also ours. So we've heard a little bit about climate change and food. And, you know, I've been thinking about how, you know, it's not one of the things that gets talked about in some of the larger negotiations, how fragile the food system is in the crisis of climate change. And when that system breaks down, the first and most immediate hit is our communities, both in access to that food and the economic prosperity. You know, they come and get the food for pennies and then sell it at a high dollar crisis prices. We know those prices, right? We live in some of those cities where they start jacking up the prices on vegetables that I know the farmers who they source that from, right? And so, Shingetu, I wanted to ask you this question is, you know, how does agroecology and food sovereignty work to keep the local food system strong in the face of disaster?
Okay, so agroecology and food sovereignty work in amidst disasters, because we've realized with the COVID pandemic that you were not allowed to move from one city to another, you were not allowed to move around. So that was us for a take that each and every community needs to be independent. They need their own dependency. And this is not only on the production part of, but the whole food systems. Each community needs an independent food system that is built within its context. And agroecology does work because agroecology feeds the people. We say that we should have food for the people and not food for profits. We should say that we are saying that we mustn't have a cycle of dependency on this food system, but we should have a cycle of healthy foods for the people and both for the environment. So agroecology works to build the dependency in communities. They don't have to depend on any chemicals, they don't have to depend on anyone. They have their own indigenous seeds that they use. They have their own organic pesticides and natural available resources that are around them that they can use in terms of production of their food. And we have also seen that food sovereignty and agriculture conserves biodiversity. We as small-scale farmers, we practice our way of farming in a way that it is not like monoculture, where we have these vast, large pieces of land whereby trees are getting cleared so that they could farm. We practice agroforestry, where we integrate our plants and our trees and our crops together. We practice intercropping, whereby one piece of land can have 4 or 5 crops in there. So in the midst of a disaster of having little rains or high temperatures, we know that if one crop fails, definitely the other will. We've seen that agroecology builds on food sovereignty. We've got our variety and diverse grains, diverse seeds in our communities that offer different nutritions to our health. So we've seen that agroecology really works in terms of COVID pandemics, and it creates that autonomy within the communities to depend on themselves and not depend on anyone to come to their aid. And we've also seen that agroecology helps in a way to strengthen and have communities to own their territories, to own their culture, to own their land, to own and the means of production. So agroecology really works, and food sovereignty. Thank you.
Thank you. So, you know, many of these solutions that we're hearing, and I've heard a couple of people mention this, so I'm coming to you next, Nadia, but, and maybe there's others that want to speak to this, but, you know, folks are not only working towards solutions that are to the most benefit of their immediate needs, but at the same time, they're having to fight back against corporations who are also there to extract and exploit the resources, or there to extract and exploit a disaster and make profit from the governments because of disaster. And so, you know, it wouldn't be fair for us here to not mention that here at COP, because they're very prominent in this COP. But it's also important for us to share, you know, what's been happening for those who have been pushing back against sort of corporate harms, environmental harms to the community. And what does that mean for frontline activists who are often intimidated or jailed or threatened? And what does that mean? Like, I think that's an important thing for us to share here also as a human rights issue of, we have the right to protect our communities and homeland. We have the right to protect ourselves from harm. And if that harm is coming from corporations, we have a right to push back against them. And so what I want to ask is, as you're talking about like these fights in your community, and you know what's at stake, you know, what does that fight look like in terms of those outside influences that are causing harm in your community? And so Nadia, I would like to ask you if you would start and see if anybody else has an offering as well. And I also wanted to ask you, because you had a 12-point sort of plan that I was like, okay, I'm curious about that. And it sounded like it's in this lane too. So.
Right. So one of the recommendations is to consider trade agreements as false solutions. So that is a new wave of colonialism happening in our lands. So somebody actually told me that the tragedy does not lie with the commons. It lies with the private, it lies with the multinational trade agreements that continues to perpetuate violence, continues to perpetuate destruction, extinction, and the loss of biological diversity that we are seeing at the moment. So I just wanted to share the story. In Malaysia, we have recently signed on the Trans-Pacific Agreement, TPPA, which makes people who owns heirloom seeds as illegal. It falls under the penal code. That would mean it takes away the right of people to cultivate their land. It takes away their sovereignty to cultivate their land. That would also mean women who holds tradition, who holds the power to cultivate land, are gone. They are not able to provide the means for their family. They lost the financial independence. That would mean they would rely on the male members of the family, and that is a violence against women. And when flood happens, all of the rivers where families rely water on, they are polluted. They smell like fertilizers, and their children has fungus on their skin. So this has been going on for years and years and years, and this has not been addressed by our governments. And that, again, is a violence against our body, against women. So what I want to see here in COP, if not this year and next year, after the next year, we have to keep on fighting to put the sexual reproductive rights together with food systems, together with land rights governance. They all should be put within the same language, human rights language, and they all should be included within the negotiations. So this is what is missing. Every single year, the gender lens are missing, and they are all connected with each other.
Thank you. So there's so much that we could go on for days on this, but I also want to sort of bring us back to this moment where we're here and the space that we are here at COP. And so very quickly, and I would say maybe a minute because I want to leave some time for us to ask questions from the audience, is, there's a lot of what has been shared here and the expertise, but there's also other needs that we have around research and around policy development. And, I want to think about what is it that we want to see happen at this COP? What is a key, for you and your community, what is a key policy decision that you would like to see passed at this COP, and what you think is necessary to ensure that we're moving in a just transition, we're moving with sort of response to community and your community specifically. So I'm going to start back down there with you, Limai, and we'll just come quick. And these are just short, we'll leave a little space for folks to ask questions.
So for us, we think that it is the developing countries that have been taking the stage here at COP. And as you see in your IDs, we are literally observers in this space. And many governments has not really taken our positions in the negotiations. So what we would like is the admission of the losses and damages that we have experienced, and the responsibility of developing countries to take that burden and not to apply the same burden to us, especially developing countries, for example, for climate mitigation, where it is very clear that adaptations should be the focus for us in reparations for the damages that we have experienced. So I think having that climate justice framework in this whole conversation is the most important. Putting at the front lines the environmental defenders and the frontline communities that have been affected. I think in the actions in the spaces, civil society organizations has brought that in their messages, but that's not really the case in the negotiations. So I think it's really hard to think that the governments will do that, but I think we should continue asserting this in these spaces. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that question. I've been wanting to answer that question. First and foremost, I think I would want people to listen to me. Not hear me, listen to me. Listen to the pain behind the stories I share. Listen to the hurt I bring from my communities, and realize that we're not just lands and waters. We're not a territory. We're human beings with the right to thrive, not survive. Have compassion for us. If you get to that step, then grant us a seat at the table. We deserve to be in positions where we're making choices on behalf of our communities, because we are the ones on the front line. I come from a tiny island where you can drive around the whole place in 2.5 hours. We're a speck on the globe in the middle of the Pacific. If you don't know where Guam is, go look on the map after this. Go look on the map. Listen to my story. Give us a seat at the table. We deserve to be there. My community has knowledge, indigenous knowledge that have worked. We have persisted and resisted through so many colonizers. The name of my island is Guahan. It means to have, because my people and my land have abundance. We have knowledge to share. We have solutions to share. We are not against one another. I'm not looking at these negotiators as if they are my enemies. I'm trying to gain them on my team. I'm trying to sit at the table. So please listen. Bring this story back. Share it with your friends, with your communities. Follow my organization. Follow our work and help get us a seat at the table.
Thank you, Mina. Nadia?
It's been 27 years, right? And the process is still the same. Indigenous people, youth have to crawl to come to these spaces to reclaim our spaces. And damn, 27 years is a long time. Today, I'm really saddened to see there's a lot of faces who can't be here. There's a lot of voices are still silent. There is somebody in the prison in Egypt, still there, waiting to be released. I cannot imagine being here to speak about, peace, security, talking about everything about security, and at the same time, seeing so many different voices are being stifled. But I do have hope. I must have hope, because that's the only reason that I'm here, to see everyone's faces, to see everyone talking about their solutions. It gives me hope, and it gives my community to work better, to come here and continue to claim our spaces. Thank you.
So my direct response is to the U.S. government. I'm a U.S. taxpaying citizen, so this is who I'm talking to. I need the United States government, when y'all leave COP, is to put a financial investment into all countries that you all have harmed. That means all of them. Everyone that's on this panel, everyone that's on this continent, we need investment, right? We want to make sure all loss and damages are addressed and responded to, because it's deserving, right? And when we leave here, right, I want the American government to know that if you don't stand up for us, we don't stand up for you. We got elections coming very, very soon, okay? And this is a direct response to that mess, because we put you into office and you're playing around with our tax dollars to harm our people, and we would no longer sit around and deal with that, right? And for the UN, the next COP space needs to be way more accessible, right? For all people from all backgrounds to be able to access this place. This badge process is ridiculous. People should be able to have access to this conversation and being here. And lastly, our disabled brothers and sisters, I've been walking around this space, y'all. And if you don't have an able body, it is extremely hard for you to access this space, and that is ridiculous. It is time, it's been time. It's probably their fault anyway, why people's bodies are not able in the first place. We need to make this place accessible for all physical bodies, all different backgrounds, all languages, all type of people, every culture, to have access to it. And that's what we're demanding moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
First time in an event like this in my whole life. A little bit disappointed of what I've seen. The best thing is being with all of you. It's an incredible experience to understand firsthand the global experience of the real people in the front line. We need profound and intense radical change. I'm not seeing that in their language, in their subtleties, in their complex solutions that really are not real. We need to change radically what we are living in life. This is happening, and it's happening in an incredibly fast pace. 27 years? That's crazy. How many actions have happened? Very few. We need that to happen now. We cannot wait for that. So the day that I get to my house, what do? I work. I start to work and continue to do the work that we have been doing for generations, for thousands of years, and we can't let that stop. So the best thing that I've gotten from here is all of you again, and we're going to keep that on. Like Mina said, we want you guys to understand that we exist. We want you guys to support the work that La Vía Campesina and all the organizations that are here are doing. We're not going to stop. And really, I don't know what these people are doing and the decisions behind. But again, I really don't care, because I know the work that we're doing, and I know the solutions that we have, and that are the real solutions. Thank you.
I've been hearing a lot about climate finance. We demand climate finance. We demand this, but I'm really worried because they are saying in a fancy way to us. They are saying it in a way that we might think that they are for us, but obviously they are not. These people are just after making profits. I was in a session whereby they are saying that we need to finance science, we need to finance the technologies, we need to do the net zero thing, but they're doing this on our land. The finance is just for the corporates to come and displace us. The finance that they're advocating for is just to violate our rights as peasant farmers on our land and territories. I would like this COP to have a climate finance or put more support in public rural support, not investments, because when they say investment, it comes with terms and conditions attached to it. It comes with strings attached to it. We want public rural support, be it small grants that have no strings attached to them. They were saying that they believe that 70% of the food comes from the small-scale farmers, and they are saying that we want to make loans accessible to them at low rates. They have to provide collateral. For what? What for? You are appreciating that I'm producing the food. So why don't you just give me a grant so that I can better myself and better produce, not having the strings to attach to it? So we are saying, so I would like this COP to have a policy solution whereby grants are given to rural people for their betterment with no strings attached, with no any form of do this so that you get this.
There is so much knowledge up here on this panel. There is both local knowledge, traditional knowledge, policy knowledge. There is climate knowledge on this panel up here. And so I'm just appreciating all of you all for sharing. We have a little bit of time to offer hear some questions from the audience if anyone is, there's one over there. So we'll take a couple of questions. Sure. Come forward.
Getting a seat. I thought I had a loud voice. Getting a seat at the table. This is not a question, it's a plea. As you said, there's so much knowledge and experience and passion here. And directly to your point about getting a seat on the table. This is what, if you want something out of COP, this is what I'm asking you guys to do. I just came from some bullshit session on transition to renewable energy, right? Mainly 6 white men talking about how driving electric cars is going to solve the world's planet. This is the stuff they need to hear. My point is, let's all go up there, find sessions like this, and disrupt it. These are the questions you should be asking. Instead of driving an electric car, the end of the supply chain for a Tesla is some 10-year-old kid in the Congo digging out cobalt with a pickaxe. That's not going to come in the reports. That doesn't come in that conversation, right? And as you said, they're living in different worlds, right? This empowerment stuff is bullshit. Power cannot be given, it has to be taken. And that's the only way you can do it.
Thank you. I will offer that, you know why, sometimes in a space such as COP, it can be overwhelming, right? There's a lot of static, there's a lot of stuff, there's lots, right? And it can feel overwhelming. And sometimes I feel powerless. But then I end up in spaces with other brothers and sisters who are holding the same work. And then I remember I am powerful. We are powerful. We're still powerful, right? Even in this space that tries to shut us out, we are still powerful. And the proof of our power is the restrictions that have been imposed in this COP. It's about limiting our input and participation. So I know they know we're powerful by the number of restrictions that I have experienced in the time being here. So, any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Javon Sands, and I'm a student researcher. I just want to say thank you first to all of you panelists. You did an amazing job, and I appreciate everything you set up here. And my question comes from what came out of this conversation is that the COP needs to be transformed and to be more accessible for persons. And a lot of the conversations I've had at the COP have been around that topic. And I want to know your thoughts on how do you feel about the COP becoming something that is localized in communities where the action needs to take place.
Anybody have? So here's my answer. Anybody else would offer? Absolutely. I think there needs to be more resources for people to participate, to get here, right? To be here. It's very cost restrictive for lots of communities and lots of people. I come from an organization that has the ability to be here and send folks here. That's not true for everyone in other countries. And the other is we need to have spaces like this to share strategy, share solutions, share like what we want to see and the kind of societies that we want to see, and be able to do that across international lines, across countries. That may or may not be in COP. That may be some other parallel space that we need to create for ourselves. Because if COP is not going to listen to us as much as we're going to be here and continue to be here, if they're not going to listen to us, we need to be able to implement the solutions, the strategies, and implement what we want to see happen. And that may mean us creating and engaging in other spaces and parallel spaces, but that are about international sort of connection and how we are moving and strategizing to move our governments to the way that we need them to move. That's my short answer. Anybody else have an answer? Sir.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais parler français. Moi, je m'appelle Freddy Mumba. Je fais partie de la plateforme des agriculteurs du Congo. Et donc, je viens du bassin du Congo.
We're going to just take a moment to make sure somebody can translate for you so we can understand your question.
Oh, yeah.
The panelists do not have translation devices to hear the question. Can we just have someone come out and help translate his question real quick so we can answer quickly? To just come here to the mic. Thank you. Much appreciation for those who are helping us with interpretation, translation, important work so that we can make sure we all have mutual understanding of each other. So thank you all.
Ok. Donc je disais, je viens de la plateforme des agriculteurs du Congo.
So I'm from a farmers group in Congo.
Et là, on dit que l'agriculture, c'est celle qui détruit les forêts.
So there we say that agriculture is what's destroying the forests.
Et on nous demande, nous, de faire des efforts pour que nous ne puissions pas détruire les forêts.
And so efforts are being made to prevent destruction of forests.
Et nous apportons, nous entrons dans les solutions locales à travers l'agroecologie, l'agroforesterie.
So we get into local solutions through agroecology and agroforestry.
Pour que nous ne puissions pas détruire davantage les forêts.
So we don't want further damage to be caused to the forests.
Mais ce que nous déplorons,
but what we deplore is this.
C'est que les pays développés,
Yeah, so developed countries.
oui, donc qui avaient pris des engagements de pouvoir financer toute la lutte contre le changement climatique.
So supposedly they are committed, in theory, to fighting climate change.
Aujourd'hui, n'arrivent pas à honorer leur engagement.
But they're not honoring these commitments.
Et cependant, ce sont eux qui sont des grands pollueurs et qui sont en train de contribuer donc à augmenter le phénomène du changement climatique que nous subissons, nous les agriculteurs.
So they are the big polluters and are doing more harm, in fact, than us as farmers.
Alors, ce que nous demandons maintenant, c'est que nous puissions nous mobiliser, tel que nous sommes rassemblés ici, et que nous puissions aller vraiment contre tous ces pays développés qui sont des grands pollueurs et qui ne fournissent aucun effort pour arrêter ce système-là.
So we need to get together. We're here now. We need to get together to fight against these developed countries that are big polluters and that are promoting this damaging system.
Et c'est la première fois que j'assiste à la COP comme ça, mais je suis presque déçu puisque tout ce que les décideurs sont en train de faire, ça n'a vraiment rien à voir avec les solutions qui peuvent aider les agriculteurs à pouvoir sortir des difficultés.
So it's my first time at the COP. I'm rather disappointed because I can see that all the things that are being done here by the decision makers are doing nothing to help farmers get through their difficulties.
Donc ce n'était pas une question que je voulais poser, mais c'est une observation pour dire que nous devons nous mobiliser tous ensemble contre tout ce qui est en train de se faire, car chez nous on dit, tout ce que vous faites pour moi, sans moi, vous le faites contre moi. Voilà ce que je voulais dire.
So, so more of a comment than a question, but just really reiterating this fact that we must get together, we must unite.
Ce que vous faites pour moi, sans moi, vous le faites contre moi.
Okay, so it's like if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem,
Yeah.
broadly speaking.
Thank you. Yes. These are important conversations for us to continue to have. Like, this panel is not the end of this conversation. This panel is not the end of, this discussion that needs to continue, not only between the communities here, but those who are here. There's people who are watching this live stream right now. So I want to thank everyone here for your offering, your heart, your time for being here with us, away from your families and your home communities. But most importantly, I thank you for your heart, your passion, and your expertise, and being here. And it's been an honor to be here with you all. Thank you all.
Globalicemos la lucha. Globalicemos la lucha.
Globalize the struggle. Globalize the struggle. Thank you.